So I absolutely loved Obsession. I think it was really effective type of horror while also being very entry level for people who, like myself, not into horror that much. So I think it's a great horror film because it does a lot of three things. Great performances, once again, pretty simple lore. There's nothing much to build off of. It's really built based off the characters themselves. So I think it's really easy to follow. And third, I think it's just a very grounded premise of a man who just wants to be loved by this girl that he enjoys, right? But then it goes on its head and it twists and turns and it kind of leads into something else entirely. And it's really simple. I think that's why it's so accessible in a way. And I think that's why I enjoy it. It's such a grounded premise, and it's honestly a really relatable premise about a guy who's trying to get out of that state of loneliness. He's trying to share life with somebody, but in turn he loses that life entirely, and I think that's shown through the great performances by specifically Indy Never Ready. Shout out to her. She's going big, and I love that she's going big after seeing her in Superman and Lois. I love that show. Her character's okay, but I love her. I love that show. She was great in it, and I think she's gonna go for the moon because she was fantastic in this movie. And the other actors in Curry Baker, I don't really know the rest of them by name. I'm kind of an asshole that way. I feel bad, but shout out to Curry Baker. This is his first big project. I know he's done projects before, but I think this is his first big project to go mainstream, and he hit it out of the park with this one on a 750, oh my goodness, 750K budget. Like that's barely anything, and he made it work, and it looked fantastic. So I think that's what's great about it, and I think it's just the overall premise and the character, the horror of it all comes from the sense of the person who's creating the scenarios, and the horror is also the person who's the victim, and I think that's what's great here. It's like creating your own villain type victim, and frankly Bear is the villain. We all know that. I think it's kind of brain dead to not think that, but I also think it's effective to show that a guy who wanted so much, who wanted and chased for the stars, he flew literally too close to the sun and realized that it wasn't like that, and I think that's what's great here. It's a realization of that we're not gonna be really satisfied within our lives, even if we get what we technically wish for, right? It didn't lead to things we wanted, right? Because we weren't specific enough, or it just wasn't right. It wasn't meant to be. And I think that's why that's what this film shows us, right? And that obsession of the idea and the ideal isn't gonna translate well to reality. And I think that's why that creates something within Bear, and that's why it creates him as the villain. And I think it works effectively, to me at least, And I think how they do Nikki as a horror icon and how they handle her is so effective yet so simple. It's really about lighting here, and I think it's not something like big CGI monster or some big like makeup. It's very subtle type of stuff, like uncanny valley type makeup on her eyes in some scenes, and it's just the behavior of the human, right? It's like, yeah, a demon did possess this body, but it's also like it's so close to human, yet it's so far away that it's not right, and that's why it's called the uncanny valley type of aura to her. Like I remember one scene when she was in that corner in the room, like it was just freaking spooky, but you can't even get a good look at her, but that something's off, right? She looks still the same, yet there's something off that doesn't make her feel human, and I think that's why it works so well, right? It's showing us that this obsession, it's a very human trait, but it creates such inhuman action and such inhuman reality. Like this obsession, like celebrity culture, right, or looking up to somebody, being obsessed with somebody, it creates and frankly dehumanizes people. It takes away the humanity of somebody, to take away their flaws and take away their purpose just to fit yours, to fit your quota, to fit yourself. And I think that's why that obsession is unhealthy, and it shows very well with Nikki. I think Nikki is a perfect representation of this, while also being a perfect and such a scene stealer and everything. She's fantastic. I remember one scene that really spooked me and spooked a lot of people was when she, I think they were saying I love you to each other, right? And then it just resets, and when she resets, she walks backwards, and that's, traditionally not how would it be that scary, it's not a real jump scare, but it still feels off. It's so human about how being inhuman. It's like robotic in a way, and I think that's why it works so well. It's like someone pulling her strings backwards, rewinding that moment again. And I think that's what's the horror of it all. It's just not authentic and not what humanity is, and that's why I think it works so well in this context. That obsession isn't healthy because it takes away and strips away the humanity of what was once there, what we once believed in, because we can look at anybody and be obsessed with them, but then realize that the one thing that takes away that glimmer will bug us forever, because people are not perfect, right? They're not gonna be, and they won't ever be. They won't fit into your agenda, nor you will fit into theirs, and that's perfectly fine. And I think that's what this film is trying to get at. right? That obsession is the real horror of it all, and it honestly leads, that one man's obsession led to the entire downfall of his entire life and downfall of other people's lives, which to the point where the real victim was Nikki at the end, where she loses the possession, she is out of it, but then she's all alone within the horror, and she didn't even know what happened. That's like, you know, the craziest hangover story ever. You know, it's just like she's probably just going through the motions, and then bam, you know. And I think that's also a big thing I really want to get at here, is also like there's certain scenes where she just like gets out of that possession, where she's like, I think she one scene where they're on the bed and they're making out, and then bam, she's like, what the fuck? And then like, oh, what the fuck, you know? And then she gets back in the trance. That's fantastic work, right? That's a great performance by Indy Never Ready. Once again, you know, I think it's a really effective horror movie while being so simple and effective. And I've said effective way too many times, but also the real villain of it all was just scary hot baddies. So shout out to you, Latinas.